Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathor's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to see about the Crown's rule. In the last lecture, we already studied about the Company's rule. So in this lecture, we are going to see about the Crown's rule. So in this Crown's rule, it started from 1858 to 1947. Let us see some introduction here. In this Crown's rule, there are mainly two types of the acts that are present. The first one is Government of India Acts, and the second one is Indian Council Acts. And this Government of India Acts, there are mainly three types. The first one is the Government of India Act of 1858. Second one is the Government of India Act of 1919. And the third one is 1935 Government of India Act. And if you see the Indian Council Acts, there are mainly three types. The first one is 1861. Second one is the Council Act of 1892, and the third one is the Indian Council Act of 1909. So let us see some introduction before going into these details. So first, why the government, that is British government, came up with this Crown's rule? Mainly there was an event which happened in the history, that is the revolt of 1857. This revolt of 1857, it is also called as the first war of Indian independence, and also it is called as the Sepoy Mutiny. So because of this revolt of 1857, the administration or the governance in India which is taken over this British Crown. So from 1858 onwards, the entire administration in the India which is in the hands of the British Crown directly, and they came up with the different sets of acts, and the governance of this India in the hands of the British Crown from 1858 until we got the independence in the year 1947. So in this time period between the 1858 to 1947, there are many acts which came up by this British Parliament. So if you see here, so what is about this Indian Council Act? So because of this occurrence of this battle of 1857, that is the revolt of 1857, there was the realization by the British that there should be the Indians that should be entered or to be taken also be to the part of the administration in the India. So in the context, that is the Indians should be the part of administration in the India. So in this process of taking the Indians into the Legislative Council, they came up with the three main acts. These are the first one, Indian Council Act of 1861. Next one is the Indian Council Act of 1892. And next one is Indian Council Act of 1909. It is also called as Minto-Morley reforms or Morley-Minto reforms. And if you see this Government of India Acts, they are very, very important regarding the prelims point of view. So if you see here, there are some changes that are happening from one act to another act in the Indian Council Act. So if you see in the 1861, this was the first time Legislative Council, it is opened for the Indians, and mainly three Indians were included in this Legislative Council. They include the Raja of Benares, Maharaja of Patiala, and next one is Sir Dinkar Rao. And later on in 1892, there is increase the number of the Indians in the Legislative Council, and for the first time they given the right to vote, and also there is a questions can be asked regarding the budget to the executive. And if you see in the 1909, the number of the Indians in the Legislative Council, it is increased from the 16 to 60, and in the 1919, there was the increase in the number, or we see there is a majority of the elected Indians in the Legislative Council. Here we saw there is an increase in the number of the members of the Indians in the Legislative Council, that are about 60%. But out of the 60, only they are directly elected 40, and decided by or selected by the British include 20. So there is the majority of the Indians in the Legislative Council, but there is no majority of the elected Indians in the Legislative Council. So this is satisfied by the 1919, that is Government of India Act 1990. It is also called as Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. So in this 1919 Act, there is an increase in the majority of the elected Indians in the Legislative Council. So this is about some brief background regarding the Crown's rule. So let us see in detail what is there in the Lakshmikant. So the first one is the Government of India Act of 1858. It is known as the Act of Good Government in the India. So why it is called as Act of Good Government? There is the abolition of East India Company happened. So we also see there is a good government that started in the India mainly through this Act of 1858. So it is called as the Act of the Good Government in India. So Act of the Good Government in India, it is the Government of India Act of 1858. So this is the important prelims fact. So if you see some of the important features of this act, they include the first one, the Governor General of the India to that of the Viceroy of the India. From 1858 onwards, there is no Governor General of India. Then this Governor General of India, it is replaced by the Viceroy of the India. So the first Viceroy of the India is Lord Canning. And the second important one is, there is the end of the double government. We studied already about this double government. This came up in the Pitt's India Act of 1784. So now there is the end of this double government happened. So in this double government, we have the Board of Control and also the Court of Directors, and this was ended in this Act of 1858. And next one is, it created a new office, and the name of this office is Secretary of the State for India. It vested with the complete authority and also the control over the Indian administration. So there is a new office, that is Secretary of State for India. So this post was in this act, Government of India Act of 1858. And also some other important feature is, it established about 15-member council in the India, mainly to assist the Secretary of the State for India. And the second important act is Indian Council Act of 1861. And if you see, one important point regarding this 1861 is, it is the first step of decentralization. Already yesterday we draw some graph to identify, to remember when there is a centralization happen, when there is a maximum centralization, when there is a decentralization, and the maximum decentralization happen. So let me draw here again. This is the graph that you should remember. So first, there is a first step of centralization happened with the 1773 Act, that is Regulating Act of 1773, and the maximum centralization happened in 1833, and the first step of decentralization started in the Council Act of 1861, and the last step of decentralization happened at 1947. Okay, these are the some of the acts, or this graph you should remember and you should make note here, because you can get a direct question regarding this, when this centralization happened, when the decentralization happened in your prelims. So let's come back to the Indian Council Act of 1861. The first important feature is a beginning of the representative institutions by associating the Indians with the law-making process. So for the first time, Indians were entered in the Legislative Council such that they also participated in the law-making process. So if you see the Legislative Council here, it contains both the Britishers and also the Indians. So whether there is elections which are held to elect these Indians? No. But how this selection of this Indian made? These are the Indians who were selected by the Britishers. They include mainly the princely states or the native states or any zamindars who are very loyal to these people. So if you see, there is no direct election of these Indians who entered the Legislative Council in the year 1861. So if you see, there are mainly three people who entered this Legislative Council. The first one is Raja of Benares, second one is the Maharaja of Patiala, and third one is Sir Dinkar Rao. These were the three important people. So let us see the next feature. It also provided for the establishment of the new legislative councils even for the Bengal and the northern provinces and also Punjab. So this is the first step of decentralization. And next important feature is the Viceroy to make the rules and the orders for the more convenient transaction of the business of the council, and it came up with the first time the portfolio system. To this portfolio system, it will empower the Viceroy to make the ordinances. So what is the meaning of the ordinances? Even in our constitution, it talks about the ordinances. Ordinance making power of the president. Okay. So whenever there is a houses, that is either the Lok Sabha, either the Rajya Sabha, when they are not in the session, whenever it is an urgent need to bring up any law, the president can make the ordinances, mainly through the Article 213 of Indian Constitution, and Article 123 of Indian Constitution talks about the state government having the power of ordinance. So let us move to the next now. This act talks about the Indian Council Act of 1892. If you see the important feature, it increases the number of the people, that is additional or non-official members, who are present in the central and the provincial legislature councils, and it gave for the first time the power of discussing the budget and also addressing the questions to the executive. And the next one is it provided for the nomination of some non-official members as well. So these are the three important features of this Indian Council Act of 1892. And let us see the next one. Next one is the Indian Council Act of 1909. It is also called as Morley-Minto reforms. Okay, here if you see the Morley is the Secretary of the State, and the Minto, it is the Viceroy. He was a Viceroy at that time. And if you see some of the important features, it increased the size of the legislative councils, mainly in the both central and also the provincial level, and the number of the members in the central legislative assembly or legislative council, they are raised from the 16 to 60. So till now there are the only less number of the Indians who are present in the legislative council, and through this act, that is Minto-Morley Act, we saw there is increased the number of the Indians who are entered this legislative council, and the number is 60. And out of this 60, the 40 people, they are directly elected, and other 20 people, they are selected by the Britishers. So we did not see any majority of the Indians, they are elected people, because we see among the 100%, there are the 40 Britishers are present and the 60 Indians are present. So if you see on the prima facie, there is a majority of the Indians seen. But if you go into deep, out of this 60, only 40 are directly elected by the people, and the remaining 20 are selected by the people, selected by the Britishers. So if you see in depth, there is a majority of the Britishers than compared to the majority of the Indians here. And if you see the next important feature, it provided for the first time the association of the Indians with the executive councils of the Viceroy and the Governor. So this is an important feature. And if you see the next one, it introduced the communal representation. So it is very, very important. If you see the timeline here, it is 1909. Before this 1909, in 1905, we saw there is a partition of Bengal. This partition of Bengal, it is supported by some of the elite Muslims who are present in this region. So to satisfy these Muslims, here Britishers came up with the system of the communal representation. Okay, this communal representation came up by this British mainly to satisfy the Muslims who supported this partition of Bengal. And what is this communal representation? Here Muslims by accepting the concept of separate electorate. So when you are talking about any reservation, the reservation means, for example, if you see in the local government, either in the panchayats or either in the municipalities, we see there is a 1/3 reservation for the women. That means these 33.3% seats are mainly reserved for the women. For these women, the votes will be done by the women and the men irrespective of the religion, correct? But if you see the separate electorate, for example, there are 10 seats who are reserved for the Muslim there. Only Muslims will elect these Muslims. So this system, it is called as separate electorate. And next one is, it provided for the separate representation of the presidency corporations and also the chambers of the commerce and also the universities and the jamindars. So it provide even the separate representation for the some of the elite people. They include the presidency corporations, they include the chambers of the commerce and also universities and also jamindars who mainly favor or who may be loyal to the Britishers. And let us see the next important act. This is the Government of India Act of 1919. So we already see the important thing regarding this Government of India Act of 1919. We see there is a majority of elected Indians, in the Legislative Council, and also we see there is introduction of diarchy. So let us see this act detailedly. If you see some of these features of this act, the first one is there is a dual scheme of the government that was introduced, that is diarchy. So what is the meaning of the diarchy? There are two levels of this governance. The first one is at the central level and at the provincial level. And at the central level there is a British, and in the provincial level there are the Indians. And if you see, there are some list as well. There is a transfer list and also reserve list. This reserve list, it is present with the Britishers, and the transfer list which is present with the Indians. So if you see, one important feature of this act is it also introduced for the first time the bicameralism and also the direct elections in the country. And next one is it required the 3 of the 6 members of the Viceroy Executive Council to be Indian. So in this way, there is entry of the Indians into the administration is happened. And next one is it extended the principle of the communal representation mainly to the other communities. They include Sikhs, Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians and also the Europeans. And the next important feature is it granted franchise to a limited number of the people, mainly based on the property, tax or education. So this is very important. Whenever there is a direct elections which came up by the Britishers, it will be not given to all. There is no universal adult franchise. Only there is some amount of the franchise which is given to the certain sections of the people who have the education purposes, and some have the land, some have the property. Based on the education, property and also the tax, there is a franchise which is given. And next important feature is a new office of High Commissioner in India for London, a new office for the High Commissioner for India in the London, and transferred him some of the functions performed by this Secretary State for India. So this is very important point. There is also some transfer of the powers happen. And next one is there is establishment of the Public Service Commission. So this is also very important. And next one is for the first time there is separation of the provincial budgets from the central budgets happen. And also we saw there is authorized the provincial legislature mainly to enact their budgets. So the first important point is the diarchy. And next important one is there is increasing the majority of the elected Indians in the Legislative Council. And also they established the Public Service Commission, and also they separated the provincial budgets from the central budgets. So these are some of the important points regarding this Government of India Act of 1990. And next important act is the Government of India Act of 1935. So this is a very important act. So because of this 1935, we see there are such many structural reforms that are made up by the British government. So if you see some of the important features of this act, they include there is establishment of the All India Federation, which consists of the provinces and also the princely state. Through this All India Federation, we came up with the federal roles, we came up with the central list, state list and also concurrent list, and there are about 59 subjects here and about 54 here and 36 subjects in the concurrent list. So for the first time we came up with the division of the list mainly through the All India Federation. And next one is it abolishes the diarchy. We already saw this diarchy came up with the Government of India Act of 1919, and this was abolished in this Government of India Act of 1935. And it announced or it introduced this provincial autonomy in this place. But we did not see any provincial autonomy in the or major autonomy in the center. Only there is autonomy which is given in the provincial states. And next one is it also provided for the adoption of the diarchy at the center. So we studied this abolition of the diarchy happened, and this diarchy which is only in the provincial level but not at the central level. And it is the act which introduced bicameralism out of 6, that means 6 out of 11 provinces. There are about 11 provinces which are present at that time. Out of this 11, the 6 will have the bicameralism, and those include Bengal, Bombay, Madras, Bihar, Assam and United Provinces were bicameral at the time of 1935. And some other features include it further extended mainly the principle of communal representation by providing the separate electorates to further depressed classes as well, but it is not accepted, and they came up with the Pune Pact in 1932. And the next one is it abolished the Council of India and it established the Government of India Act of 1858. Mainly they came up with the Council of the India in the 1858, but this was abolished in this act. And it extended the franchise, and now the franchise it is about 10%. And next important feature is it provided for the establishment of the Reserve Bank of India, mainly to control the currency and also the credit of the country. So this is a very important prelims fact. And next one is, it provided for the establishment of the federal court, and which was set up in the year 1937. So in this 1935 Act, there are many important features that you should remember. The first one is the Reserve Bank of India, second one is the federal court. We see there is a provincial autonomy, but there is no autonomy in the center, and they also abolished the diarchy at the provincial level but not at the central level. And the Council of India, which is established in the Act of 1858, which was abolished in this act. And we also talked about the communal representation. It is extended to the depressed class, but there was a Pune Pact that happened between the Gandhiji and the B.R. Ambedkar, and it is famously called as the communal award as well. And if you see, the last important act in this lecture is Indian Independence Act of 1947. On February 20, 1947, the British Prime Minister, who was from the Labour Party, that is the Clement Attlee, he declared that British rule in India would be end by June 30, 1948, and because of this statement which is given by the Clement Attlee, there was a need for the new act. This act, it is the India Independence Act of 1947. So if you see some of the important features of this act, they include, the first one is, it ended the British rule in India and declared India as an independent and also sovereign state from August 15, 1947. And the second important feature is, it provided for the partition of the India, and this led to the two important dominions or independent dominions. They include Pakistan and also India. And next one is, it abolished the office of the Viceroy. And next important feature is, it empowered the constituent assemblies of the two dominions mainly to frame and adopt any constitution for their respective nations and to repeal any act of the British Parliament. Till now, what are the acts which are made by the British Parliament? They can be repealed. If they want to adopt any constitution, they are free to adopt those constitution. And the next important statement is, it abolished the office of the Secretary State for India, and they transferred his function to the Secretary of the State for the Commonwealth Affairs. And next important feature is, it granted the freedom to the Indian princely state either to join the Dominion of India or Dominion of the Pakistan. It created many problems in the post-independence India, and later on these princely states are integrated into the India with the help of this Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And next one is, it dropped the title, that is Emperor of India, from the royal titles of King of England. So it also dropped the titles like the Emperor of India. And next one is, it discontinued the appointment of the civil services and the reservation of this post by the Secretary of the State for India. So there is no involvement of the British after the independence. These important posts like the civil services, they will be appointed by the government of India. And if at all any members who are already working in this civil services, who are appointed before the August 15, 1947, they will continue and they will enjoy all the benefits that they are entitled to that time. Okay, so this is about the Indian Independence Act of 1947. By this, we successfully completed the first chapter in our Lakshmikant, that is historical background. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I also ensured that you people easily can remember these features. I explained in a great detail that you can easily remember all these points. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to my channel. Please do like, share and comment my videos. Thank you.